Welcome back to my channel, my angels. Today we are going to get into the 7 interior design mistakes you should avoid. I'm Nina, by the way. For those of you that are new to this channel, we talk about interior design night and day. And today, if you love design that feels effortless but lived in, you're in the right company. We're going to look at 7 interior design mistakes that quietly sabotage even the most beautiful rooms. Some of these are common habits, others are a bit controversial, so stay with me. Your next project might thank you. So, as many of you know, I spend my weeks on site visits, walking clients through renovations, new builds, and these 7 issues show up consistently and constantly. So I really want to address them because if you guys are thinking about renovating or in the process of it or whatever it may be, I think it's very important that we address these issues head on. Now, you guys are on the red elevator, which is the channel with over 120,000 subscribers that has to do with interior design. We have a brand new vlog channel, which is about behind the scenes. And what we do on that channel, I can't even repeat on this channel. I'm only kidding. It's really about behind the scenes. We talk about fashion, we talk about beauty, we talk about shopping, we travel, we talk about buying for homes, clients, and we talk a lot about really behind the scenes of how it is to be an interior designer living in Los Angeles and a lot of family life and a tremendous amount of travel. So if you're interested in that, we will link that below in the description section. Let's go. So the very first mistake that I noticed that I must bring up because it's eating away at me is what I call architectural vandalism. And another is a luxury move that photographs well but feels lifeless in person. So let's climb from 1 to 7 and see if you're guilty of any of them. I hope you're not, and chances are you're not because you're part of this channel. But often we need to point them out and correct our mistakes. 1, burying original character. Oh, that's bad. Guys, that is so bad. We never cover original architectural details ever, unless there's a problem or we need to, unfortunately, expand the room or whatnot. But things like plaster medallions, picture rails, caved mantles with drywall or built-ins is really designed vandalism. And I just hope we're consulted on Century Homes where a single weekend update erased 100 years of craftsmanship. And that is really tremendously painful to my heart. In fact, I was just recently visiting a client in the South Bay who had me come out before she did any work to her home because it was an original build from the 40s. No, I apologize, from the 30s. And she was going to do a lot of remodeling and expansion, and she wanted to make sure that we kept the integrity of the house and brought the same integrity into areas that were being expanded upon. So these are things that you must think about carefully and try and duplicate if need be. So original millwork is often old growth timber, so it's far denser than today's lumber. Once removed, it's irreplaceable and its resale value is immense. So by removing those, we are basically dumbing down our homes and erasing all of its character. So a better approach would be to refinish. Don't replace. Strip and paint, repaint, I should say, trim in a complementary hue. Try a satin finish to reveal depth, certainly in older architectural details. That's what I recommend. And integrate storage respectfully. Use freestanding furniture or inset cabinetry that echoes the existing profiles instead of boxing them in. Always, my best advice to you is to always document before you touch. Take photos, close-up photos and measurements with those photos. Maybe you do a video where you say, this is 18 inches, this is 4 inches, it protrudes by 2 inches. That way you can respect the existing proportions in case you demo and you need to rebuild. After you've saved the bones of the house, let's talk about a finish that can betray you if you don't plan ahead. But before I get into it, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys. I know I ask every time, and I'm sorry to ask. It pains me to ask, but just that 1 second of pushing the button, free for all of you, makes a huge difference on our end, and it means a lot. A lot of you think you're subscribed, but actually you're not. So I would really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Number 2, high gloss without light planning. Gloss lacquer ceilings or cabinetry are stunning when natural light floods the room. In a north-facing or even heavy space, though, gloss highlights every seam, roller mark, and surface imperfection. That's why it is very important that if you begin or even attempt at doing lacquered ceilings, that you bring someone who is an absolute professional, because otherwise you have just wasted thousands of dollars. It's very expensive to do. It's not something simple. Your drywall needs to be level, completely level, and everything needs to be absolute perfection. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And what you want to do as a professional, my advice really is to spend an entire day tracking sunlight, morning, midday, dusk, and figure out how and where the shadows fall. Believe it or not, we do this. We actually do this in a computer program that allows us to see exactly where the shadows are going to hit. For those of you who don't have access to these programs or the knowledge to do so, you can just track it throughout the day. It will be a long and boring day, but definitely worth it. Order large 2x2 sample boards in your actual paint or lacquer sheen and hold them vertically and horizontally to see how they behave. That is really a great way to be able to do lacquer. Now, if the room is dim, choose an eggshell or satin finish and add layered lighting. So cove LED sconces and dimmable overheads to mimic the reflective effect. Now that we've calmed the shine, it's time to loosen up those lines. The number 3 mistake you should absolutely avoid is over gridding your layout. Let me explain. Perfectly aligned art, equidistant shelving, lighting in exact rows. Clients think it feels organized, but it can become very oppressive. And what humans naturally gravitate towards is we crave a mix of geometry and irregularity. Pure symmetry can feel very, very corporate. So I don't recommend having everything symmetrical. There is a base of symmetry that is important. A better approach would be break a gallery wall with a single oversized piece or a sculptural mirror. Introduce curves, perhaps an arched lamp, a round ottoman, or an organic side table. And definitely use odd numbers. Odd numbers are your best friends in interior design. So you always want to have groups of 3, 5, 7. For instance, if you've got a shelf that you're decorating, you want to have 3s and 5s. If you want to put, a grouping of stools in a corner, you definitely need a 3 or a 5. So speaking of visual rhythm, let's also tackle decor choices that sap a room's personality. So the 4th mistake that I see quite a bit is the copy and paste decor. Rows of identical vases, designer candles in every corner, let's say, and coffee tables styled in the exact way where they have the same look in every room. And that just looks like a catalog and not your home. You don't want to do that. You want it to make it look like this was intentional, but yet haphazardly done, if that makes sense. You want to have a variety of heights, finishes, and provenance. This creates a collective narrative. That's why I love it when you guys send me sometimes the things that you've collected at estate sales, like when you get a really good find, and put those pieces out for display. It just combines a beauty that you can't duplicate, and nobody else is going to have those pieces. So I love combining vintage finds with contemporary pieces. I find it to be the most effective way of bringing class and sophistication into a room. Layer textures. I've always talked about that, and I can't say it enough. For instance, glazed ceramics with raw wood, hand-blown glass, anything Murano. I always have an alert on my eBay. I just type Murano. Remember, Murano is also a weird car part, so you got to do it right when you do your alerts. So think in verticals, tall branches paired with like squat bowls. You want that exaggerated symmetry, or asymmetry, I should say. Give each vignette at least one element older than you are. In my case, it's going to be a lot harder because I'm old. So it might be easier for the young followers here, but you get it. You want to do something that has history. And it's easy to find because people are getting rid of their things as they pass, unfortunately, and we want to give new life and sustainability to those items. Now, number 5, we are almost at the 7th. The 7th is the best. You've got to stay for that. Before I get into the 5th, I do want to mention that I do Zoom one-on-one consultations. And I have met so many of you with design dilemmas that we have been able to fix within our Zoom consultation that have floored you and me, because the answers to me are so obvious. And most of you are like, oh, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Or some of you instinctively know that's what you have to do, but you're unsure of yourself. So whatever it may be, I am here to give you consultations, whether it's 20 minutes or longer. All you have to do is click the Zoom link in the description section below, and my calendar will pop up. Next thing you know, there I am in your room. We're walking your house and we're making decisions together. And I love meeting every single one of you. Number 5, a very important one, and that is ignoring the first sight line. So what you see when the front door opens sets the tone psychologically for the entire house. And many homeowners style the entry console but forget the corridor, the living room, and beyond. That's why when you open my front door, I'm going to pop in a video of this because it's really important. You see all the way to the very end. That's how architecturally I designed it. Helpful that I'm a designer, that I was able to have forethought and be able to plan this. But at the very end of your sight line, I put, well, you'll see a statue and a pedestal. And that is what is the money shot. So realtors literally call this the money shot for a reason. It anchors the experience. And especially when you put good lighting on this, and most people come over at night when you're having a dinner party. So it's like, wow, you've arrived, and it's so good. So stand at your threshold, take a photo. The camera exposes clutter instantly. Get rid of the clutter and frame a view that is acceptable to you. Frame a view that you would like to see if you were walking into somebody's home. Especially if you do this at night, you could look at the way that the art is lit and how the hallways are lit and find a way to really make it impeccable. And if possible, position a window or mirror to capture natural light if you are in the stages of construction. But if you don't, you could certainly add a lot of layered lighting to this area to just make it really shine. Now, speaking of first impressions, the floor is the very first thing our eyes register, often before we even notice the furniture. I don't know if you guys knew that. So that's one reason I partnered with Ruggable, as you guys know, and I have a rug collection that I'm obsessed with and feel very lucky to have been able to share with the world. This has been a collaboration that has been going on now for about 5 years, I'd like to say, and it's been tremendously successful. So I'm really proud of it. And there's a lot of great ways that you can anchor your entrance and your hallways with runners. And I honestly, arguably would say my runners are probably the most sophisticated. Well, I'd like to think, and hate to toot my own horn, but I spent a lot of time designing these rugs. So we're going to link them here for you to see a few of them. And then we're going to link the rest in the description section. So the price point is incredible. They're easy to wash. And a lot of people forget runners, and runners are great, and they really can beautify and change a room. And guess what? When you're tired of it, you can bring in a different design because you just roll them and bring another. That's the beauty of it. That's why I love Ruggable. Number 6, we're almost at the end. Now, let's talk about multiple finishes in one room. You guys know that I prefer a single finish, meaning, let me explain. Different finishes in one room can clash visually, breaking the sense of cohesion and making the space feel unintentional. So consistent finishes create harmony. Now, what I mean by that is something very specific. I'm not talking about mixing your metals and bringing in things that are old versus new and bringing it all together. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about doing an entire room in one single material. So although contrast drives visual interest and defines zones, you still can achieve something utterly more elevated and more sophisticated by bringing in the same material throughout an entire room. This is very impactful. Imagine a viola bathroom that has viola marble walls, viola floors, viola backsplash, viola tub. That might sound like it's going to be overkill, but just the opposite. It really brings things together because it's a choice in exposing the same material on different finishes and different surfaces for different uses that makes it just another chef's kiss. Also, I'll give you another example. Wood. So there's something really gorgeous about a cabin or a room, maybe even a bar that has wood, a wood bar, in addition to wood walls, meaning, you've got your molding or your veneer or whatever it may be, and you also have the wood floors, and then you have wood knobs on the wood cabinetry, like it's wood, 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 and it could just look so good, and it can look so intentional. And then perhaps there's a touch of burgundy velvet on those wood stools. I mean, can you imagine this? I'm loving it. Where's this room? I want to go for a drink now. And finally, lift your beautiful eyes upwards because we're going to talk about the default white ceiling and how she has to go bye-bye. Now, don't look at my ceiling and say, why is your ceiling white? Because I've already started painting my ceilings in another color in other rooms, okay? So I am doing this right now. Many people default to a bright white ceiling even after bravely choosing a rich wall color, and it just stops the room cold. And when the eye travels from deep teal walls to a stark white lid, shall we say, for lack of a better term, it just feels unfinished and it's like missing a puzzle piece. So color drenching, as you guys know, it's my favorite thing to do. I love it. It just looks so refined. It looks so rich and it envelops you in color, and at night it glows beautifully, and in the daytime it casts, a beautiful hue and, different tonal variations depending on the time of day. It is a win-win. Okay, so please, I would like everyone to note, everyone who's here and watching, I would like my casket one day, I know it's a little morbid, to be color drenched. Okay, I'm not going down without it. Okay, so it instantly raises perceived ceiling height because there's no visual break. And it also creates the cocooning luxury that we all love. It's like going back into the womb, guys. And if I could, I would, trust me. Also, if you have low ceilings and you paint your ceilings white, it's paradoxically drenching can make them disappear because of the way that it just seems like it's endless. Do remember that your ceilings need to be flat and your walls can be eggshell. And don't worry about mixing the sheens. When you're color drenching, it's okay. You just have to make sure you're using the same color. Don't forget to integrate the trim and the doors. Painting them the same color makes it so much more interesting, and it eliminates contrast. And for whatever reason, we don't want contrast in this particular look. And a pro move is to test a large swatch on actual ceilings and walls. Like perhaps you do a 90-degree angle with the wall and the ceiling, and then you look at it over different periods of the day before you commit to that color. Now I need to know which one stood out for you, because there are different methods and different designers have different ideas. Some might say contrast is much better than color drenching. So I want to know which ones really resonate with you and which ones you love. I read every single one of your comments. Let's have a debate, guys. I'm ready. I love you, and I can't wait to see you guys again next week on this channel, The Red Elevator.